Hello, I'm Matthew Jarron, Museum Curator at the University of Dundee, and welcome to the latest in a series of short films in which I talk about some of the highlights of the University Museum collections. And today we're taking another look at the collections of the Tayside Medical History Museum, and I want to use those to explore the history of Dundee's hospitals. Sadly, we don't have any objects relating to Dundee's earliest hospitals in the medieval period. The first official record we know of is a charter from the 1390s granting to the Trinitarian Red Friars Monastery an adjacent building for use as a hospital. Following the Reformation, this came into the hands of the town council. You can see it here in Sletter's engraving of Dundee from 1693, the large building with the spire on the right of the picture. This is one of 4 hospitals that we know existed in Dundee in the later medieval period, all run by the church. It was situated at the foot of South Tay Street, and in its later years was described as a large and splendid hospital for old men. By the 18th century, the practice of taking in elderly people for the remainder of their lives had become outmoded, and the building was then used as a school, the Dundee Academy. Today, the DCA stands on the site. In 1735, a dispensary opened in Dundee as part of the growing voluntary hospital movement in Scotland. It was funded by public subscription, but we know little about it until 1782, when a new subscription opened to meet the growing medical needs of an increasing population. In 1793, members of the dispensary committee teamed up with the town council, the 9 trades and various others to plan Dundee's first modern hospital, the Infirmary. The building on King Street was constructed between 1794 and 96 and celebrated on this coin made by James Wright Jr. It took another 2 years to equip it properly, and it finally opened to patients in 1798. It became Dundee Royal Infirmary in 1819. This was the infirmary's home until 1855, after which the building became a model lodging house and later another school, before eventually being demolished in the 1970s. In the early 19th century, epidemic fevers were rife, and by the 1840s, 85% of admissions to the infirmary were patients suffering from infectious diseases. Cholera was a particular problem, and in the 1820s the town council acquired an isolated tenement at the shore for use as a cholera hospital. This reached its peak of use in 1832, when more than 800 cases were admitted. The building was later demolished to make way for Mather's Hotel, now the Malmaison. In the mid-19th century, the rapid expansion of the jute industry led to a massive increase in Dundee's population. A new hospital building became necessary, and in 1855 the new Royal Infirmary opened at the top of Constitution Road. This would be the city's principal hospital for over a century, and would eventually close in 1998, exactly 200 years after the original infirmary had opened. We have hundreds of objects in the collection from the DRI, as it was known, and you may have seen a previous film that I made showing some of those, so I've chosen a few different ones to show you here. Here's one of the Silver Nurses badges, this one awarded to Christian Duthie in 1957. Here's a hot water pot used to make tea in the nurse's sick room. A tile from the fireplace of Ward 2. A really with-it 1970s placemat from the canteen. And an early cardiac defibrillator. We also have various artworks of the hospital, including this print by Hamish F. Souter and a drawing by Graham Clilverd. Having sold off the cholera hospital in 1867, the town council made another attempt to isolate infectious patients by erecting a temporary hospital on the outskirts of Lochee for patients with smallpox and typhus. These bed cards are from the early 1870s. The Lochee buildings, together with another temporary hospital at Cleppington Road for scarlet fever, were closed down when King's Cross Hospital opened as a permanent infectious diseases hospital in 1889. It expanded considerably in the first half of the 20th century, but most services moved to Ninewells in the 1990s, and today the building serves as the main administrative centre for NHS Tayside. Our King's Cross collection includes a tea service with the hospital's coat of arms, a throat spray, and the Dundee Corporation Hospital's tennis trophy, won by staff at King's Cross in 1939, presumably the last time it was contested. Dundee's first asylum was founded in 1805 as part of the infirmary. After a long fundraising campaign, a separate asylum building was opened off Albert Street in 1820, its mission statement being to restore the use of reason, to alleviate suffering and lessen peril where reason cannot be restored. An 1875 charter separated its management from that of the infirmary, but by that time it had become too small for the needs of the community and moved to an imposing new building at West Green near Lith, opening in 1882. This painting of the building was made by a patient at the hospital. Gowrie House was added nearby for private patients in 1901. Under the NHS, the two buildings were amalgamated, and in 1963 they were renamed Royal Dundee Lith Hospital. This is a portable ECT machine for electroconvulsive therapy used at Lith in the 1970s. In the 1990s, art therapy became an important treatment, and we have several artworks created by patients. A new psychiatric unit, the Carse View Centre, was opened at Ninewells in 2001 to allow for the closure of the main building at Lith. Just outside Dundee, the Baldovan Institute at Strathmartine was Scotland's first residential hospital for children with learning disabilities, and only the second in Britain. Founded in 1852, it was originally, rather unfortunately, titled the Institute for Imbecile Children. When financial problems beset the institute in the 1920s, a consortium of local county authorities took over the hospital, though not Dundee Corporation. It was not until the advent of the NHS that Dundee children could once again attend Baldovan. In 1959, it was renamed Strathmartine Hospital. This brochure dates from 1972, and we have nurses' badges from the same period. The hospital was decommissioned in stages from the mid-1980s and closed completely in 2003. The Eastern Hospital opened in 1893 as a sick hospital for the Dundee poor, situated adjacent to the East Poorhouse. It was later renamed Maryfield Hospital and underwent considerable development and upgrading, notably in maternity and child health, as it gradually lost its poor law image. Later developments included a new geriatric unit and a pioneering general hospital psychiatric unit, but the building was considered unsuitable for modern purposes and it closed in 1976. One of the largest objects we have in the collection is this artificial kidney machine, one of the first in the UK. It was set up at Maryfield by Dr. W.K. Stewart and was first used on a patient in 1966. Maryfield was also home to an important biochemistry lab, and we have various equipment used there, including this polarimeter used for the identification and quantification of blood sugars, and an albuminometer for measuring protein levels in urine. The Royal Victoria Hospital opened in 1899, built around the 18th century Balgay House, purchased to house so-called incurables, patients with conditions such as cancer, rheumatism, paralysis and spinal disease who were unwelcome in voluntary hospitals because of the length of time they would need to be admitted. In later years, the hospital focused on chronic disease and geriatric medicine. More recent additions include a centre for brain injury rehabilitation and Roxburgh House for palliative care. The most unusual object we have from Royal Victoria is this album compiled by a nurse, featuring drawings and poems by patients, many from the First World War. Several new institutions opened during the war. A new Dundee Women's Hospital opened in Elliot Road in 1915, replacing a smaller establishment that had started in Seafield Road in 1896. In later years, this became an annex of DRI for convalescent and radiotherapy patients before closing when Ninewells opened in 1974. The Victorian mansion Ashloody House in Maryfield was purchased by Dundee Town Council to use as a sanatorium for tuberculosis patients, opened in 1916. This was Dundee's third sanatorium, joining Barnhill Convalescent Home and the Sidlaw Sanatorium at Auchterhouse. Those two were later demolished, but Ashloody was converted for use by geriatric and chest disease patients and eventually closed in 2013. Another Victorian house, the Lodge in Broughty Ferry, was used as a Red Cross auxiliary hospital during the Great War. It then became the Dundee Infant Hospital, with 40 cots for treating nutritional disorders in children under 5. Here's the original nameplate from the building and a diet sheet used there. In 1965, the building became the Dundee Limb Fitting Centre, a pioneering initiative founded by George Murdoch, which provided an integrated rehabilitation programme for amputees. The centre has now evolved into the internationally renowned Tayside Orthopaedic and Rehabilitation Technology Centre, TORT, which moved to Ninewells in 1999. We have various pieces of kit from the Limb Fitting Centre, including an entire leg. It was during the Second World War that arrangements were made to conduct a survey of hospitals across Scotland to aid future planning. The Eastern Region report focused on the inadequacies of accommodation at both DRI and Maryfield, noting that neither was adequate to provide accommodation for a modern hospital with an associated medical school. With the formation of the NHS in 1948, Dundee's hospitals came under the management of the new Eastern Regional Hospital Board. This is a printing block for their coat of arms. The new board lost no time in addressing the problem and concluded that a new hospital and medical school should be built on a single and accessible site on the periphery of Dundee. They hoped to concentrate all acute hospital services on the one site, but a centrally imposed bed limitation forced a rethink, and both DRI and Maryfield were given temporary stays of execution. Ninewells was the first completely new UK teaching hospital to be built in the 20th century, and most aspects of policy and design had to be considered from scratch. The medical school hosted an international conference on hospital design as part of the new hospital's planning. An experimental approach was taken, and a £50,000 programme of full-scale mock-ups allowed testing of key areas of layout, equipment and component design in the wards, laboratories and operating theatres, as seen here. The widely held theory of hospital planning of the time was of a multi-storey block of wards on top of a low-spreading diagnostic and treatment building. At Ninewells, an alternative concept was developed of a predominantly low group of buildings to facilitate ease of movement, face-to-face contact and future expansion. The slope of the site was used to facilitate segregation of internal traffic, each level having its distinct point of access on the north side. The concourse at the heart of the hospital allowed direct access to both clinics and medical school, a key feature of Ninewells being the embedding of student teaching in the hospital. 25 years after it was initially approved, Ninewells Hospital eventually opened in 1974 with justifiable pride. The project was so revolutionary that it attracted visits from all over the world and led to it being dubbed the jewel in the Scottish hospital crown. As with DRI, we have numerous objects from Ninewells, a few highlights being this silver communion goblet used by patients in Ward 1, a Geiger counter from medical physics, a non-invasive blood pressure monitor from the special care baby unit, a skin test cabinet from dermatology, a cardiac ultrasound from ageing and health, an X-ray tube from radiology, a skull clamp used in post-mortems, a badge from the Ninewells Cancer Campaign, and this painting of the hospital from 1975 by Neil Fraser McLean, a talented amateur painter who worked as hospital engineer at Ninewells from 1967 right up until his death in 2000. So I hope you've enjoyed our quick run-through of Dundee's hospital history, and look out for further films from us in the future. Bye for now.